Welcome, Pokemon players, to another episode of Discount Pokemon Decks. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm not really going to play a game, although it looks like I am. I'm more going to do a vlog and talk about opening hands, trainers, supporters, etc. So you see here I have a deck. I have my active Pokemon, and you're looking at my hand right now and you're going, wow, that's kind of a bad draw. My opponent, of course, gets Sycamore, can play a whole new hand right away, and is able to proceed. And that's obviously something that's big in Pokemon. You want to be able to get new cards in your hand. As you can see, I have, I had 7 cards. I have 7 in my hand, 1 here. So I've drawn 8 cards, and I've yet to draw a supporter. And now I'm going to ask you guys a question. How many of you guys know what the odds are of drawing a supporter? How many supporters do you put in your deck? How many draw cards do you put in your deck? And what are the odds that you get them? So that is the question here. So let's just say if I do just kind of play along and we'll do this, hit done, my opponent will go. I'm hoping to top deck something, right, eventually. What's the chance? What are the odds I'm going to get a card I need before my Swinub gets knocked out? Oh, well, that's nice. I'm drawing one for a prize because my computer opponent is not really that great, but I drew another card this turn, Stadium. I actually drew 2, one for the prize, Stage 2 Mamoswine. Again, I don't have any draw ability. I have a V-Seeker in my hand, which everybody says is a good card to, have 4 in your deck, but doesn't seem to be helping me on this first turn. So that is what this vlog is going to be about. It's going to be about what are the odds of drawing a card on your first turn, or rather, that first turn dead hand? How long can this last? What are some ways to predict how often this is going to happen? And how can we build our decks around it? How can we make a better deck? All right, so I'm going to exit this game for now. And we're going to do something that's just as fun as Pokemon, and let's look at an Excel sheet. I should say an online spreadsheet. This is actually a Google Doc imported for an Excel sheet. As you can see here, I have lots of numbers. So let's talk about this first. So I drew 7 cards on my first turn. And what are the odds that I get something, a supporter in my hand? Well, the question is, how many supporters do I have? If there's only 1 supporter in my hand, there's an 88.3% chance I will draw none, which means there's an 11% chance I'm going to draw that card. So if you have 1 card in your hand out of 60 cards and you hope to get it on the first turn, there's only 11% chance. Let's say I need a Stadium in my hand. I've got a good grass deck, and I want to make sure one of my forests are giant plants. Well, the most I can put in my deck is 4, and that's for any card. You can also do the same with just about any card, but if there are 4 Stadiums, the chance that it'll be in my hand, that not be in my hand the first turn, is 60%. So the chance is only 40%. So the odds aren't really in my favor to get any one individual card if you're limited to 4 in the deck, and we all are. But let's say supporters. How many supporters should I put in my deck? How many Sycamores and N should I have in my deck? Well, we can have 4 of each, so that's 8. So what if I have 8? Well, what's the chance I have it in my first hand? Well, now the odds have improved to 65%. And you can see how the odds rapidly go up. You break 50% once you have 6 in your hand, but let's think about it a little bit more. Is this a good percentage to have a supporter in your hand? If we have 4 N and 4 Sycamore, that 34% of the time I'm going to end up with a hand just like that with no supporter at all. That's not really great odds. So you may go, well, how about 12 or 16? And, maybe that's right. Maybe we should have some Birch and Shauna and some other cards that we can draw, or go even further. And, hey, 90% of the time I'll be able to, only 10% of the time will I be stuck with a bad hand like this. Well, having 16 supporters in your hand might be a little crazy. Unless you're running a Chandelure deck, then it's perfectly logical. But this gives you an idea of what you should expect and how many. This is the, what I call this row here is the dead hand row. So if you only have 8 supporters in your hand, you're going to have an opening hand. And right now I'm only talking about opening hands, and I want to be very clear about this. These are not going to be perfect odds past an opening hand. And actually, they're not going to be perfect odds once I start talking about some of the other topics, because it's impossible to calculate every possibility, even if in one deck, as opposed to even on top of it, when you expand that to every possible deck. So decks with or without Shaman, decks with or without Orangaroo. Cards. You can have all types of different cards in your deck that help you draw and accelerate your draw, whatever. What if you draw a couple of a couple of extra cards in your first turn? You use the Scorched Earth and a discarded energy. So now you have 11 cards, and there's fewer cards in your deck. So take these odds with a little bit of a grain of salt. Okay, these are the odds. Your first opening hand. You have 7 cards. What is your chance of getting a draw supporter with that? Okay, and I am keeping this at the number 7 because you have to have one Pokemon. So obviously that's not going to be a draw supporter. Even if it's your Shaman or Hoopa, that's going to go into active spots. So a lot of people will put Trainer's Mail in decks, and especially in today's standard, Trainer's Mail seems like everyone puts 4 in, and of course a couple of Shaman and some Sycamore and N. But let's say we do have 4 Trainer's Mail in our deck. What's the chance it comes in we get that in our first hand? And so the chances are only 28% that you will have a trainer. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. No, I'm wrong. The chance is, of course, 40%, right, that we have it in our opening hand. But let's say we do. What's the chance that we're going to draw the card we need with Trainer's Mail? So let's say if we have one Sycamore in our deck and we have a Trainer's Mail in the first turn and we play that Trainer's Mail, what's the chance we're going to get that Sycamore? That's these odds right here. So there's only a 7.7 chance we're going to get a Sycamore. If we have 4 Sycamore, that chance goes up to 28%. If we're looking for Sycamore or N, well, that chance is 50%, which is not bad. So if you think about it this way, let's say we have 8 Sycamore and N in our hand, that's our only draw, and we put 4 Trainer's Mail. So the likelihood that we'll have a Sycamore or N in our hand is 65%. Okay, so let's say about 2/3. 1/3 of the time we will not have that. Okay, but we may have a Trainer's Mail in our hand in that instance. If we do, the chance, and of course the chance that we have a Trainer's Mail is right here, 40%. So of this 134%, you multiply it by 40%, and then if we're trying to play that Trainer's Mail to get it, 50%. So we kind of cut these, you kind of see we're cutting the average in half of dead hands. Okay, so Trainer's Mail does help. Again, the more of that card we have, let's say we have 12 Trainers, we have 4 Birch in our deck. Well, now we play a Trainer's Mail and it's a 66%, 2/3 of a chance. So we go from half to 2/3 by adding 4 more cards that we could use for draw. Okay, now it doesn't have to only be N or Shauna or Birch. In a deck where you have Shaman, we can include that, and we can also include Ultra Balls in our calculation. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, which is why, as you can see here, if you have a Shaman in your deck, and N, and Sycamore, and Trainer's Mail, the odds are going to steadily increase on your ability to draw, or the odds will decrease of you having a dead hand. All right, now let's say all of these failed. You were in the minority here. You have 8 cards in your deck, and it's only a 34% chance. You did get a Trainer's Mail. You played it and you failed, so there's 50% chance here. So again, you multiply these chances. It's lower and lower. What's the chance you top deck that card? You draw it right off the top of the deck. Well, that's only 15% if there's 8 of those cards. Again, if we're counting Trainer's Mail or Ultra Ball or something like that, or if we put 4 Birch in our deck, it goes up to 23%. But you could see the possibility of top decking, drawing a card off the top of your deck that's useful, is not really that good. You might even have, let's say I have 10 energy in this deck. What's the chance that I draw an energy on my next turn? Well, if you have 10 energy, and it's, again, we're looking at 52 cards because we're assuming you already have a hand. What's the chance you draw an energy? It's only 19%. It's pretty small. Another interesting one I thought of was if you play Scorched Earth or Kukui, which lets you draw 2 cards. Again, what if I play that and I need to draw one of my supporter cards? Well, if I have 8 in the deck, It's a little less than 30%. So again, the odds aren't that great for Kukui and Scorched. We can see the odds are best the more supporter cards we have in our hand and the more trainer mail we have in our hand. But there's a caveat to that, okay? Now let's look how we can apply these odds. I made a second sheet here, and I'm going to make this sheet available somehow. Maybe I'll just make it an Excel sheet that you can just import. I'll put it out somewhere. There'll be a link in the description. All right, let's look at Shintaro Ito's championship deck from 2016, his Mega Audino Rogue deck. How many draw cards did he has? Well, he has 4 Sycamore, 2 N, so that's 6. He has Shaman in this deck, so 8. And we're going to count the Ultra Ball as well, 12. I'm not going to count Hoopa just yet. We're just going to leave him out. But let's just say, for argument's sake, 12. And there's 4 Trainers Mail, but we're not going to count that either. So we're going to go into my Excel spreadsheet here. I'm going to put 12 supporters. Now, there's 4 Trainers Mail. We know that. But the Trainer Mail cannot call a Shaman into your hand. Okay? So it can call a Sycamore, an N, or an Ultra Ball. So that's 10 cards there. So there's 4 Trainers Mail and 10 cards it could possibly call. Okay? So let's just say for a second, with 12 supporters, what's the chance that he gets a hand with none of them? Well, he starts off, and I'm using an 8-card hand here because you have 1 Pokemon, and you draw a card on your first turn. Okay? So, yep, 7 cards here out of 59. There's an 18% chance he heads up with a quote-unquote dead in hand. Okay? There's a 41% chance that he has either a Trainer's Mail or Random Receiver. Random Receiver wasn't a card when he built this deck, so these are all going to be zeros for now. What's the chance that he has it? 41%. So his dead hand without Trainer's Mail or Random Receiver is 11. He has no, so this 11% here, he has no supporter of his 12 supporters. That means Shaman, Ultra Ball, everything like that. And no Trainer's Mail or no Random Receiver, which he didn't have anyway. Okay? So 11% here. Now, he has a Trainer's Mail in his hand 41% of the time. And 41% of the time, it will fail. So the total number of hands that Trainer's Mail cuts down to is 3%. So his total fail percent is 14%. So it goes down from 18 to 14 by having the 4 Trainer Mail in his hand. Okay? Now, what if he didn't have the Shaman in his deck? So we'll do no Shaman. Okay? So let's just say Shaman was not in this deck. Okay, the number of supporters he would have would go down tremendously. It would only be 4 Sycamore, 2 N. That's it, 6 cards. Because the Ultra Ball doesn't give us a Shaman, doesn't give us a new hand. Okay, so 6 cards. All right, 4 Trainers Mail. He can only use those Trainer Mails to get those 6 cards. Zeros here. And let's copy this. See if I do this right. Without Shaman, his first hand of being dead would be 45%, but his ultimate hand is 38%. And you could see the Trainer's Mail don't help all that much, from 45 to 38. So a good way to look at this is how much does Trainer's Mail or Random Receiver help? Well, you look at the difference between these two numbers. So this helps by 4%. Sure, the Trainer's Mail helps by 7%, but still 38% is a huge amount of failure. What if we up that to... We took the 2 Shaman and the Hoopa, let's just say, and we replaced them with supporters. So there's 9 supporters in his deck. Let's say we have 4 Sycamore, 4 N, and a Birch. Okay? So this will go up to 9. And the number of cards you can call for Trainer's Mail. So his dead hand without a Trainer's Mail will go 29%, and it'll be reduced to 23 after we account for Trainer's Mail. Now this Trainer Mail calculation isn't really precise. Just so you know, it's a good approximation. But I feel pretty comfortable with these numbers being close by a % or 2. All right? So you could see how much Shaman helps. Let's replace the Shaman. Well, no. So you see here how not having a Shaman really hurts his deck. Almost double, let's say, his draw failure rate. Probably 2/3% greater. More than that, because half of 14 is 7, and 7 plus 14 is 21. He's more than that. So his fail rate is even worse. Okay, let's go back and look at one of my decks, one of my favorite decks. All right, here we go. We have my Mega Altaria deck, and I feel this is a pretty strong deck. Do I have enough support in this deck? Draw support. How does it compare to Shintaro's? So let's look again. So I have 4 N, 3 Sycamore, 3 Shauna. So that's 10 draw cards, supporters, okay? All right, so we'll call this my Altaria. So I have 10 draw supporters. There are no trainer males in this deck. So we'll leave that as 0. And we could call, let's say, an all 10. We'll fill this out properly. Receivers. How many random receivers do we have in this deck? We have 2. Non-draw supporters. So non-draw supporters are when you play a random receiver, it's going to give us the next supporter card. So we need to calculate that this isn't going to work every time. What's the percentage chance a random receiver works? And again, we're talking about the first turn only because it's impossible to predict as the game go on. If you played 1 Sycamore, who knows how many supporters, how many cards are in your deck, etc., etc. So we're looking at first turn only. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. So there's 4 non-draw supporters. Let's copy our equation. And let's see, what's our percentage here? So our percentage is pretty high, 21%. Much worse than Shintaro's. What if I want to fix this deck up a little bit? How can I do that? Well, make my percentage more like his. So one way to do it, well, what if I up the random receivers to 4? How much does that help? Well, it goes from 21% to 18%. That's not bad. What if I didn't want to waste those 2 slots on random receivers and instead wanted to put 2 more draw supporters? So have a 4-4-4 line of Shauna, Sycamore, and N. All right, so if we did that, 12. And you see our number would be really close to Shintaro's. So, maybe that's something to consider when we build this deck. If we're not getting the proper draw support, adding some more cards in, some supporters. Obviously, in a deck like this, you have to consider what you want to take out. What will we take out? Well, maybe we take out Trubbish and Garbodor. Would that help? Maybe the Fairy drop. These are questions that no equation can answer because this is something you have to play for yourself and, play against other decks and see what's useful. If these cards are useful, then maybe it's worth a dead hand. If this isn't problematic. I don't think this deck is very problematic with dead hands. But maybe some improvement is needed. So if someone else is playing this deck and they find, wow, I'm getting a lot of dead hands, well, now you know why, because previously it was, what was this, 10? 21% of a draw fail rate on the first turn. Now, not all decks need to have a Sycamore or Light, on the first turn. If I have one of my Xerneas and one Altaria on the bench or another Xerneas, that's fine. And an energy, it's pretty good to go. But it may not happen that way. So I may be able to stall a few turns. I may not. So this is a good idea. If you're having trouble coming up with the right amount of draw, I suggest you looking at, some of these charts and maybe put in some of the data from your decks and see how does it stand up to Shintaro. I think a lot of times, and I do this myself, I'll do it kind of by feel, but I think now that I have this, I'm going to think a little bit more about what I'm going to put in my decks and how much draw support I have and what I need. What if I let's just go back, what if I put 2 trainers mail? Would that help more? Or if I use those 2 spots on these? No? So right here, random receiver is a little better than trainers mail. But obviously the best is, what if I took all the trainers mail out? Oops. Oh, I have an error in my equation here. All right, well, I'll have to fix that out. What if I put a 1 here just for now? 17%. So, you get some kind of interesting numbers. You can look at the equation, and I'll fix that up before I publish this. But I think it's good to think about concretely in terms of, what are you putting in your deck? If you're putting a Scorched Earth, a Kukui in your deck, thinking, oh yeah, I've got 10 energy, I'm most likely going to get one. Well, it's good to know the odds that you aren't. If you're putting trainer mails in your deck it's good to know what you're aiming for and what your chances are. If you think you're going to get that stadium with a trainer's mail, well, you may not. But again, deck building is more complicated than that. Just because trainer's mail doesn't give you the draw you need on the first turn doesn't mean you should get rid of it from your deck entirely. Obviously, there's some benefits to having a trainer's mail in your deck than a random receiver. Random receiver is just going to give you another draw card, whereas a trainer's mail might get you an item card that you need. Maybe you need that float stone or stadium or whatever it is. So again, these are considerations to take. These numbers, take them as is, but don't feel like, oh, I have to not put a trainer's mail in my deck because random receiver is going to give me more in the draw. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on your deck. And, it's true of every deck. That's why I said, I can't really make this video for every deck. It's a general video. I think this is good for a lot of people starting out in the game, or maybe people that have been building decks for a while. I didn't really consider crunching the numbers on this until recently, and I think this is definitely something I'm going to use every time I build a deck to think about, hey, am I getting dead hands, or is this deck going to be prone to dead hands? And some decks are okay with that, and some are not. So it's a good resource to have. I will put a link to getting this somehow. Most likely it would be an Excel sheet, which you can import into a Google Doc, a Google spreadsheet, and then do it your own way. I'll obviously fix this problem with the random receiver. That's odd. Wait, if I put 0 there, oh, because there's no trainer's mail either. Okay, yeah, I know how to fix that. All right, well, in any case, thanks a lot for watching, and until next time. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you'll know when our next video is released. Also, check out our playlists where you can find videos by topics like mill decks or cheap EX decks.